In our timeline, by 900 CE, the great Mayan cities stood empty. Their plazas silent, their temples reclaimed by jungle. But what if I told you that single collapse erased a civilization that had already calculated the length of the solar year to within 17 seconds of modern measurements? Imagine standing in the ceremonial heart of Tikal in the year 850. Not as ruins, but as a thriving megalopolis of 100,000 souls. The air thick with copal incense. The pyramids alive with priests tracking Venus across the heavens. The long count calendar ticking forward into centuries we can barely imagine. This is the story of the empire that should have been. The Maya possessed mathematical concepts Europe wouldn't discover for another 600 years. They had developed zero independently. Their astronomical charts predicted eclipses centuries in advance. And then, they stopped. Cities abandoned. Knowledge scattered. But in another world, one small change in climate, one different decision by a king, one successful harvest, and history flows in an entirely different direction. This is that world. To understand what we lost, you must first grasp what the Maya had already achieved by their supposed twilight. While Europe stumbled through the Dark Ages, Mayan astronomers sat atop their pyramid observatories calculating planetary cycles. At Copán, scribes carved mathematical treatises into stone stelae that would stand for millennia. In Palenque, engineers built water pressure systems and aqueducts that rival Roman engineering. The population of the Mayan world in 800 CE exceeded 10 million people, dwarfing any European city of the era. They cultivated forests, not cleared them. Raised field systems produced multiple harvests yearly. Their calendar systems interlocked like cosmic gears. The Hob, the Tzolk'in, the long count, measuring time in units of 63 million years. Think about that. 63 million years. They weren't planning for next season's harvest. They were planning for geological epochs. Their writing system, one of only 5 independently developed in human history, encoded not just history, but mathematics, astronomy, and prophecy. This wasn't primitive superstition. This was a civilization reaching toward the stars. In our timeline, between 800 and 900 CE, a century of severe drought struck the Yucatan. Crops failed. Wars erupted over water rights. The delicate political balance between city-states shattered. But what if, in this alternate timeline, a king named K-Inish Janab Pakal III of Palenque had been born just 1 generation earlier? What if his innovations in water management spread through the Mayan world before the droughts reached their peak? Historical records show the Maya already understood reservoir systems, cisterns, and water filtration. Pakal's engineers simply perfected them. Massive underground Chultan systems expanded beneath every major city. Aqueducts connected highland water sources to lowland cities across hundreds of miles. When the droughts came, the Maya survived. City-states that might have warred instead cooperated, sharing water resources through Pakal's treaty system. Population pressures that would have torn the civilization apart instead drove innovation. The crisis that should have ended them made them stronger. By 950 CE, when our timeline's Mayan cities lay abandoned, theirs thrived, expanding, consolidating, looking outward. By 1000 CE in our alternate timeline, something unprecedented occurs. The Mayan city-states, traditionally independent and often hostile, begin true political integration under what historians would call the Council of Four Suns. Representatives from Tikal, Copán, Palenque, and Chichen Itza. Not conquest, confederation. The model resembles ancient Greece's city-state leagues more than European empires. Each city maintains autonomy in local governance, but shares resources for massive infrastructure projects. A road system begins connecting all major cities, not dirt paths, but raised causeways of limestone blocks stretching hundreds of miles. These aren't just roads. They're statements of permanence, of civilization meant to last millennia. Standardization sweeps the Mayan world. A common trade currency emerges, not coins, but certified cacao beans and copper bells backed by central authorities. Writing systems converge into a unified script readable from Guatemala to Honduras. Educational institutions emerge. Not just temple schools, but academies where scholars from different cities exchange knowledge. The Mayan world is doing what Europe won't manage for another 800 years, creating a true cultural and economic union without erasing local identity. Something remarkable happens when civilizations don't collapse. Knowledge accumulates. By 1100 CE, the Maya have refined their astronomical observations for 3 continuous centuries. They've documented every Venus cycle, every eclipse, every planetary conjunction. Their predictions are flawless, but now they're asking deeper questions. In Copán, a mathematician named A.J. Kayin calculates celestial mechanics, the actual forces governing planetary motion. He doesn't have calculus, but he develops mathematical tools eerily similar. At Tikal, botanists cultivate crop variants in controlled experiments, selective breeding on an industrial scale. Maize yields triple through systematic agricultural science. In Palenque, engineers experiment with mechanical advantage, complex gear systems, water wheels, and grinding mills. They're approaching an industrial revolution 600 years before Europe. Medical knowledge advances. Mayan physicians perform successful skull surgeries, understand herbal antibiotics, and develop sophisticated dental techniques. The codices, bark paper books, once focused on ritual now explode with secular knowledge. Natural philosophy, engineering treatises, mathematical proofs. The Maya are experiencing their renaissance, while Europe remains centuries away from theirs. Now we reach the moment that changes everything. It's 1492. Christopher Columbus makes landfall in the Caribbean, but he doesn't encounter scattered island tribes. He encounters Mayan trade ships, massive ocean-going canoes 60 feet long, carrying 40 warriors and tons of trade goods. These aren't primitive vessels. Mayan merchants have been sailing to Cuba, Jamaica, and beyond for centuries in this timeline, when Spanish ships arrive at the Yucatan coast. They find not abandoned ruins, but functioning port cities with populations exceeding 50,000. Stone pyramids visible from miles out to sea. The conquistadors bring guns, steel, and diseases, but the political landscape is entirely different. There's no fractured empire to exploit, no recent civil war, no prophecies of returning gods. The Maya have their own steel now, traded from the Caribbean, where they've been in contact with indigenous metallurgists. They have organized armies, not warring city-states. When Cortés attempts his strategies of divide and conquer, he finds a unified confederation with diplomatic protocols 700 years old. The collision of civilizations still happens, but the balance of power is fundamentally different. The Maya negotiate from strength, not submission. Disease still comes. Nothing changes that horror. Smallpox, measles, typhus, they sweep through the Mayan world just as they did in our timeline. But here's the critical difference. Population density is lower due to better resource management. Cities have sophisticated sanitation systems. Medical infrastructure exists, healers, hospitals, quarantine protocols. The death toll is still catastrophic. Perhaps 40% in the first waves compared to 90% in our timeline. 50% of the population dies in 50 years. Unimaginable tragedy. Cities depopulate. Trade networks collapse. The Council of Four Suns fractures under the strain. For a century, the Mayan world teeters on the edge of the same collapse that occurred 600 years earlier in our reality. But the infrastructure remains. The knowledge survives. The roads don't vanish. The aqueducts still flow, and critically, the Maya maintain enough population and political cohesion to prevent European colonial takeover. Spanish settlements are permitted on the coasts, heavily restricted. The Maya learn from the Europeans, selectively adopting technologies while maintaining sovereignty. By 1600, the population begins recovering. The Mayan world survives, scarred, reduced, but unbroken. By 1700, something unprecedented emerges, a hybrid civilization. The Maya have adopted European metallurgy, improved it with their own alloys. They've taken Spanish shipbuilding techniques and merged them with their traditional designs, creating vessels that dominate Caribbean trade. Gunpowder weapons are manufactured in Mayan workshops, inscribed with hieroglyphs, but the flow goes both ways. European scholars visiting Mayan cities are stunned by the mathematical and astronomical knowledge. Mayan astronomical tables are translated into Latin and revolutionize European understanding of planetary motion decades before Newton. Agricultural techniques developed over millennia transform Spanish colonial farming. The Maya export not just goods but knowledge, and it reshapes the developing scientific revolution. In Mayan cities, Baroque Spanish architecture merges with pyramid platforms, creating a unique aesthetic. Catholic churches are built, but they sit beside traditional temples in an uneasy religious syncretism. The Maya maintain their calendar systems, their mathematical notation, their writing, while selectively adopting European innovations. This isn't colonization. It's cultural negotiation between civilizations of roughly equal sophistication. The Mayan world becomes a bridge, connecting European, Indigenous American, and African knowledge systems in ways our timeline never achieved. Fast forward to today in this alternate timeline. What would our world look like? The Maya constitute one of the world's major civilizations. 80 million people speaking Yucatec and descended from the ancient city-states. Central America isn't a patchwork of struggling nations, but a confederation of Mayan states with GDP rivaling European countries. Mayan remains the primary scientific language for astronomy and mathematics. Their base 20 number system, adopted alongside base 10 for certain calculations. Space agencies from around the world collaborate with Mayan astronomers, whose observational traditions stretch back 2,000 unbroken years. The long count calendar is used alongside the Gregorian for long-term astronomical calculations. Mayan agricultural techniques, companion planting, forest gardens, sustainable polyculture, were adopted globally in the 20th century, potentially averting some of our timeline's environmental crises. The architectural influence is everywhere. Pyramid platforms and corbelled arches appear in buildings worldwide. Most importantly, indigenous peoples globally maintained far more sovereignty. The Mayan example provided a model for negotiated coexistence rather than colonial subjugation. The entire history of the Americas unfolds differently when one indigenous civilization survives and thrives. So what actually stopped this future from happening? In our reality, climate, yes, drought, certainly, but also political fragmentation at precisely the wrong moment. Wars between cities when cooperation was needed. Agricultural practices pushed just slightly beyond sustainability. A cascade of small failures creating systemic collapse. The Maya didn't fail because they were primitive. They failed because they were human. And all human civilizations walk a knife's edge between survival and dissolution. The tragedy isn't that the Maya fell. Civilizations rise and fall. The tragedy is what we lost. Mathematical knowledge burned in conquest. Astronomical observations scattered and forgotten. Agricultural wisdom that took millennia to develop, abandoned. When Spanish priests burned the Mayan codices, they destroyed not superstition but science. 3 books survived out of thousands. 3. We'll never know what was in those flames, but perhaps this thought experiment offers something valuable. It reminds us that history isn't inevitable. The Mayan collapse wasn't destiny. Different choices, different luck, different climate, and we'd live in a world transformed. The lesson: civilizations are fragile. Knowledge must be preserved, and the future is never written until it's too late to change. What world are we building right now? What future are we choosing?